Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or just love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock the secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
What's out there? What creates the shadows in the corners or the creatures of the dark? Who are those on the other side? What do they have to say? This is the Gateway Podcast. This is not your normal style of paranormal talk radio. Brought to you live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans.
And welcome to tonight's episode of The Gateway, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. It gets easier to say that for some reason the more I do it. I remember when I first started this show, it was a little bit, I don't know why. It was very difficult for me to say 107.7 FM New Orleans. I was always very nervous, and what a difference, huh? So you've been listening to the wonderful host, Sean Kelly. I just love that guy, don't you guys, with his show Into the Night. And if you missed him, he's going to be on again, coming on Sunday. Coming next week, I'm going to change some stuff up with this show. So stay tuned for that as well. I'm going to have some video clips and things like that to add to the ads. So the weather in Vegas. Let's talk about Vegas for a minute. We have a lot of wacky guests staying in town recently. The weather's nice and we have a lot of guests in town. Everyone keeps saying Vegas is dead, and it is not, I assure you. Every time I go downtown, it is so busy. We just ended the EDC week. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a wonderful fair that happens every year. But again, we had people swimming around in the fountains and doing all sorts of other things that they shouldn't be doing. So it's been kind of an interesting week here in Vegas. It's also been pretty hot. The weather's a steady 95. It hasn't been raining, but we do have clouds in the sky. We had fireworks last night. It's definitely pool season here. So if you come out to Vegas, now's the time, because I would say by mid-June, it's going to get way too hot to even go outside. It's going to be 115. Usually that's the average. And by then, you can't even walk on the streets or anything without burning your feet. That's just how it is, right? So hold on a second. My screen just did something weird, as always. I am going to get a new laptop, too. I just need to get that hooked up, so that's coming. In my notes, I had another thing that I did this past weekend I wanted to mention real quick. I got to go to the show, the symposium given by the guys from the History Channel. They are the hosts for Agent Aliens. They're doing a tour around the U.S. They're kind of zigzagging across the U.S. right now. And let me tell you, their presentation is outstanding. Outstanding. I don't know what I expected, but I'm used to going to the Paracons and stuff where you have a couple of guys standing up there and they're not well prepared. They just talk about how great their show is and blah, blah, blah. This isn't that. They actually put on a phenomenal symposium. It was really cool. If you guys like Agent Aliens and you're into the History Channel and all that, highly recommend going to see these guys. I've learned so much in just the 2 hours that I sat in their presentation. It was just really an amazing presentation. So my guest tonight, I met him a few years ago. He's an old friend, and he's actually one of my first interviews that I did on Small Town Tales podcast. A lot of you might not remember that show. It was on for a good 4 to 5 years, and it had a lot of interesting guests along the way. It's really where I learned how to do radio and interviews and that sort of thing. But Small Town Tales is coming back in video form. So stay tuned for that. More on that later on. So you're going to see Small Town Tales again. It's not going to be a podcast. It's going to be more of a TV show. So it's going to be pretty interesting. But have you ever had strange occurrences, like you think of somebody and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's them on the other line, or something happens where you have like a deja vu, that kind of thing? My guest tonight, Dr. Molnar, we're going to talk about that. He is a practicing internal medicine hospital-based physician. He works in the ER. He's someone that's very interesting to me because he is a physician and he's taken an active role in the paranormal community, both with investigating and in his practice. It's just very interesting. We'll get more into that. But he started investigating in 2012, and then he launched his Haunted M.D. after that. And that allows him to combine his paranormal investigating along with being a physician. So the things that I've learned from him over the past couple of years are just amazing. So let me get him on here. He also investigates near-death experiences and other topics in parapsychology. Dr. Molnar, welcome to the show again.
Hey, thank you. That was a good introduction. I didn't realize I was the first one on Small Town.
Yeah, you were the very first guest, and I was so nervous for some reason.
Yeah, I think now you do mention it. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I was on again.
Thank you for coming back. Now, I know we've discussed this so many different times. In the paranormal community versus the physician world, medical field, it's two very different worlds, where the medical field normally doesn't discuss ghosts and things like that. And here you are blending the two. I know we talked about that in the beginning and how it was going for you. How is it now? Has it gotten easier?
I think it has. It's funny you mentioned this. I was recently I work with some medical students, teaching fourth year students. They have an opportunity to do what we call an acting residency or acting internship first year. So they're fourth year, so they're in their last year of medical school. But this gives them an opportunity to work with attending physicians. So I'm officially an attending physician who's done with my training. So it gives them the chance to work with an attending one-on-one. And the student I had before, the person I have now, she had heard that I was a ghost doctor. So I guess all around the hospital, people were talking about me being a ghost doctor, like in the ICU and things like that. So I've kind of gotten this. I didn't realize, I guess, that people know me more than I realized. But it was funny because I haven't met the student before, and she goes, "Yeah, you're the ghost doctor." She goes, "They were just talking about you the other day in ICU." So I've kind of developed this notoriety that I didn't realize. Because I haven't been as active as I, like when I've talked to you before. I've kind of been a little more kind of laid back and not doing as much. But yeah, so the doctors and medical students know me. Some of my colleagues recently were really interested. So I'm a hospital-based doctor. I work on the hospital. I take care of patients once they're admitted, and we have a whole crew of us. So some of the newer doctors were like, "Hey, man, I heard you got a podcast, or you're on podcast," and hey, they're like really interested. One lady I was talking to that I work with, she actually was curious about the Ouija board. I guess she had used the Ouija board like a long time ago when she was like a kid or teenager, and she was curious about that because she had heard different things about the Ouija board. So yeah, I get a lot of interesting questions. I very rarely do I get people saying what that is kooky. A lot of people are really interested and open-minded to it, more than you think. Probably, if I had to put like a rough estimate, maybe like 1 out of 10 people are actually like, we're super skeptical, and they're kind of like, Molnar, you know what you're talking about. Most even like researchers and that are and stuff like that are in our group, they're pretty interested in it. And I think a lot of doctors have had experiences either with patients or with their family. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, I got to tell you this story," or this and that. So it's kind of cool that I'm available to be a resource for for the physicians and nurses and patients and all that. So
does this allow you to help heal the patient to be able to open up to this sort of thing?
I think it does. I'm really careful. I know people out there are like, how do you bring up this, with being sensitive about people's religions and cultures and things like that. I kind of feel out situations, and sometimes the nurses will tell patients like, hey, Dr. Molnar's into, near-death experiences or ghosts and things like that. And then that'll get the patients to open up. Or sometimes the patients will just start talking about things. And I've had a few instances where people were thinking about converting over to hospice, or were already on hospice. Hospice is end-of-life care, where a lot of times when we make you hospice in the hospital, you don't have much time left. But I've been able to kind of talk to people about those things and say, I don't know for sure, but a lot of things I've done in research and investigating and things like that, that to me, there seems like there's an afterlife. We don't know for sure, but to me, the evidence leans more towards that than against it. So it seems to bring people a sense of peace. And then a lot of people are real interested in it. And it also seems to help families too. I don't know if I told you the story before, but I had families, they'll contact me through my Haunted M.D. or one way or another, and they'll say, hey, so-and-so died. And then a couple of days ago, our lights started flickering and the stereo came on, and the workshop where they always worked on cars started having weird things happening. So I get some feedback, and people are really excited because they know they can kind of come to me and we can talk about it and all those kind of things. So yeah, I think it helps. I think I'm able to help patients, and I think I'm able to help the families and all that kind of stuff. So
I know we talked about in the past that you had a couple of experiences that kind of led you down this paranormal road.
Right. So kind of had stuff all my life. You're talking about the childhood stuff, or?
Well, kind of both, because I know we talked a little bit about the childhood, but there was an incident that we talked about where you were in the emergency room, and I think you were you're trying to resuscitate one of the patients, and you felt that breeze come through the room.
Oh, yeah. You want me to share that story again? Or?
Yeah.
So this is actually, this happened in, so right now I'm like based in the main hospital, but we had a satellite hospital where we took care of a variety of sick people that were on ventilators and dialysis and things like that. And we would do dialysis in the room. Dialysis is when you hook a patient up to a machine and you kind of do the work of their kidneys. They usually get it like 3 times a week. People on dialysis, basically, they're not filtering the toxins out of their blood. So you got to hook them up to a machine. And some people do really well with that. And some people can have a hard time getting low blood pressures or get sick and things like that. So one of my patients happened to be on dialysis in a room and ended up just stopped breathing. He lost his blood pressure and he stopped breathing. So we had to start doing CPR. At this particular hospital where I was at, the doctors that were there, including myself, we were in charge of kind of running these situations. And what happens when you run a code, especially for people who are familiar, is my job is I got to kind of be the quarterback and kind of coordinate everybody. You got to have assign somebody to give medicine, somebody to do CPR, somebody to work on the airway to get a breathing tube in, potentially somebody to keep time, how far along are we into the code. So you have all these different things and you're kind of coordinating it. You also got to interpret the data you're getting. Like if they're on an EKG, you got to decide, is it a rhythm where you would shock them or give them medicines or just do CPR. CPR, you do compressions and those things. So anyways, this particular patient had lost a pulse, stopped breathing. So we had to do like the full court kind of thing on him with CPR and breathing for him and all those things. And we had been working on him for, it was probably like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, kind of get to the point of we would kind of get a pulse back and not get a pulse back. And then we kind of get to the point where it's a hard thing to do as a physician or as a team. Usually we work as a team to decide to stop a code. We were kind of getting to the point of, is this going to be futile? Do we continue or not? So we're working on him. All suddenly, and my back to the wall, and there was just a wall behind me. There was no air vents. There was nobody moving behind me or past me. There was no natural, obvious reason to feel a wind go past me. I mean, I'm skeptical, I don't jump to conclusions because even now when I'm telling the story, I keep thinking, was there something I missed? But there wasn't, as far as I could tell, there was no source of what I felt. So all of a sudden I felt this breeze kind of go around me and kind of through me, but it also had like this staticky feel, like a static electricity feel. And it kind of rushed through me, around me towards the patient. I didn't see anything. I just felt this. And, from my back to my front towards the patient. And then next thing you know, we got a pulse back, regular pulse. And we got a rhythm back, got a pulse back. And eventually you're able to get him to the point where we could transfer him to the main hospital. But yeah, I didn't know what to make of that. It was pretty bizarre. And I kind of looked around the room to see if anybody else was feeling it, and nobody else really was. But what it reminded me was, when you read about near-death experiences, there's different phases to near-death experiences. Some people have all of them. Some people only have a few of them. But one of the things they talk about in near-death experiences is when they have to go back in their bodies, either voluntarily or they're told to go back, they rush into their bodies. It's like a rushing sensation. And that's all I could think about it was, maybe it's all coincidence, but to me, it seemed like it might've been more than coincidence when this wind and energy rushed past me. Then the next thing you know, we were able to revive the patient. So kind of extrapolating all this, I think, it seemed like maybe his soul was rushing back into his body. I didn't get a chance to talk to him because we ended up transferring over to the main hospital. So I never really got to do any follow-up to see what he experienced. So that probably would have been cool to kind of finish a thought on it. But that was interesting. And to this day, even telling you, I still it's one of those things that you could still kind of feel it and think about it. And
it is so, I just love that story. That's why I have you tell it every time, because I know there's some people out there that haven't heard that story.
And it doesn't happen all the time. I've run a lot of codes in my day, not because people die on me, but we run a lot of codes, whether there are patients or not. So
don't go to the haunted doctor.
Right? I don't know that particular experience. I don't remember that kind of sensation before. One of the things you can tell when you do a code is, and I don't know if this is psychic sensations or just medical stuff, but you can sometimes know when you come in to do a code on somebody, whether it's your patient or not, you can kind of just get the feeling in the room that you're not going to get them back, so there's that kind of feeling. And I don't know if that's just our overall, just your mind kind of doing a quick assessment based on all your other experiences. Like you kind of look at a patient and know, I don't think this one's coming back. You're not 100% on that, but so yeah, I don't know. That's some kind of maybe synchronicity there. I don't know, but
I just saw there was something that was just released this past week, and I meant to look it up before coming on the show, but there's a study out there that they just released within the last couple of weeks where they found that there's an actual, like an electrical force that leaves the body whenever you die, which of course it does, right? But they're assimilating this to what makes us alive. Like it's like a spiritual energy kind of thing. I need to look more into that.
Was it like
I just saw it in, yeah, it was. I just saw it in passing, and I meant to look it up and got busy, and then of course I lost it. So I'm definitely gonna go back and try to look at that again. But it was along those lines about trying to funnel like an actual research on the soul and what makes the soul.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I've thought about that in the past. I never really took it forward, but I wondered about, like, I know it sounds a little bit kooky, but using some of our equipment that we ghost on with when somebody passes and just seeing, do you detect anything or not? Now, I know when somebody does die, either because of a code event or if they're hospice, and, when somebody dies, usually a physician has to pronounce them dead. So if somebody's hospice, I got to go in there, say they die on my shift or whatever. I need to go in there and, check them out. We do different things, see if they can hear us talk to them. You kind of, rub their chest a little bit, pinch their fingernail, look for any pupillary stuff, listen for heart sounds. So we got to go in there and pronounce them dead. But what I'm getting at with all this is you can just tell that something's gone, especially if you're in the room when they actually pass away. If you're there when they actually die, something's gone. Now, I know, physiologically, of course, you're not breathing anymore and the blood's not flowing, but there also seems to be something else. And this is more a subjective feeling kind of thing, where you just feel like something's gone. You know what I mean? Compared to alive. And I think it seems like it's more than just the fact that the body's not alive. It's not biologically alive anymore. It just seems like it's like the air has been let out. Like, whatever spiritual energy or soul, it looks like it's, it's just kind of gone kind of thing. So
are there any studies that are recent in the afterlife that you're following currently?
Not too much right now. I kind of keep an eye out on the near-death stories and stuff like that. I've had some patients tell me their stories, but I've done a lot of reading. I think there's Dr. Jeff Long. He does a real good book on it's the near-death researchers. There's a whole thing and go online and read different stories. And then UVA, there's Dr. Greisen. He's one of the physicians at its Division of Perceptual Studies. It's an academic-based parapsychology program at UVA that's actually still active. But Dr. Greisen, he does a lot of near-death stuff. So I kind of read. He had a book come out a couple years ago called After. So I kind of read the new stuff that's coming out and keep track of things like that. And every now and then, if a patient seems interested in talking and they were dead for a minute and came back, then sometimes I'll kind of probe it and say what's going on. But just kind of keeping it out there. I know there's a guy, Sam Parnia. I don't know if you heard of him, Parnia. He's a cardiothoracic guy or a cardiologist who's kind of doing some research. He's tried different methods to see about studying near-death experiences. Like one of the things I think he did is he's put stuff on top of the shelves, because when people have a near-death experience, they say they're out of their body and they can see things that are happening around the room. So he's tried different things where he's put things on top of shelves or on top of cases where people couldn't see it, but if you were floating above, you could. So I don't know. I haven't seen the official research on those things. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And then there's actually what is it?
I'm jotting some of these down as you speak.
There's the Bigelow Institute. I actually got the encyclopedia, Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies. This is actually one of the encyclopedias. But Bigelow was like a billionaire, and he was funding all these studies and contests for whoever can provide solid research or solid information that there is survival consciousness. So the Bigelow Institute, that's a place you can look to where they actually need to read these. There's like 5 volumes of these, but it's a study they did. People from around the world have submitted their research about near-death experiences and survival consciousness. So there's a lot of good things going on if people are interested in. I haven't done so much myself. I need to kind of swing back into it. But a really good book. I mean, with Dr. Greisen, any Dr. Greisen stuff, Bruce Greisen or Dr. Jeff Long. Looking to see if I have it. Yeah, actually I do. It's this book here. This is an excellent book. If you're interested in near death, it's the evidence of afterlife, Jeff Long. Actually, like you can see, it's kind of been beat up. But he has the Near Death Experience Foundation online, and people submit their stories. I think you can read through them online. And if you have your own story, you can submit. But it's really cool. He goes through the 12 different steps of a near-death experience and talks about how when you look across cultures and religions and even age groups, that the near-death experiences are similar kind of thing. So it's kind of a good book. It's not real big, so you can kind of do an easy read on it. But Jeff Long.
That's very interesting. I'll have to buy that one. I'm going to buy the Bigelow studies. I've just read all of Raymond Moody's, Dr. Moody's work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And actually I got his stuff somewhere too. But yeah, Raymond Moody actually coined the phrase near-death experience. And actually he came before Dr. Greisen. So Raymond Moody was actually at UVA. And I'm not sure of his whole story where he went. He was at UVA before Dr. Greisen. And then Dr. Greisen kind of actually ended up meeting up with Raymond Moody down the road, and they kind of put their heads together and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Raymond Moody is the godfather of near-death experiences. So.
He's the godfather. I love it.
Yeah, and he actually, besides near-death, he's had books about different other paranormal parapsychology things. So it's a good resource too. But yeah, as far as myself, I kind of keep my eyes and ears open for anything that happens, as far as patients go. And I try to read different stuff that pops up. And there's besides Jeff Long's near-death experience foundation, there's IANDS, IANDS.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good thing to check out. Dr. Greisen is linked to that too, and there's a bunch of folks in that. But that's a cool thing to belong to or be a member of.
So I got to attend a lot of the psychiatrist meetings lately because of my real job, some of the stuff I've been working on in my real job life. So I've been following the National Psychiatric Association around on mental health. And one of the things they're talking a lot about, it keeps coming up in just about all the meetings, is DMT versus being like a conscious code. Have you heard of that?
With the DMT molecule?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's the different things because there's what is it?
I know it's like controversial, but that's all over. They're all talking about that right now.
Yeah, it seems that it loops in with the pineal gland, and they haven't specifically isolated it in humans that I know of, but in like other animals, they found where DMT is an active molecule with the pineal gland, and the whole thing with the pineal gland being the third eye. And then there's in South America, Central America, it's ayahuasca. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ayahuasca. It's an herbal thing they make it's a herbal concoction that has a DMT-like molecule in it. And when you drink this particular drink, it supposedly allows you to have like otherworldly experiences. The question is whether they're truly otherworldly or they're just an hallucinogen. From the medicine. But supposedly this thing's it's the DMT related molecule in this ayahuasca is supposed to kind of open your third eye, and then you're supposed to have paranormal experiences. So, but because of that whole thing, I think that's where it kind of links into this idea that if there's DMT in the human pineal gland, and we know that the DMT can potentially cause these otherworldly supernatural experiences, then maybe we're able to have those. The thing is, they haven't officially isolated that molecule yet, but there's things in the pineal gland that are similar, like melatonin, like a distant cousin of those kind of things. Yeah. What are they saying in psychiatric wise? Are they saying it's something?
So they're using it. They're kind of comparing it to. They're not saying to use LSD, but they're comparing it to being helpful in cases with like severe depression and psychosis and all that sort of thing. So yeah,
there's big talk about microdosing, like mushrooms or even LSD. That microdoses where it's not getting you completely high, that it's supposed to help with depression and stuff like that, especially like resistant depression. And recently I had a friend talking to me that she has a patient trying ketamine with the same idea of trying to reset the brain with substances like that. So but yeah, microdosing of mushrooms and LSD, it's kind of a hot topic now as far as dealing with like refractory depression.
It's a really interesting thing because the whole point of it, I think, in terms of consciousness is getting past the what they call the right brain in order to connect with the other side. So it's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. It is. What do you do for your day job?
I do a lot of journalistic work.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I'm working with the Psychiatric Association right now and sitting in on some of their stuff. And yeah.
Well, that's cool. I know you were interested in medicine at one point. So that has to be kind of cool to get to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So some people dismiss ghost sightings as coincidence or misinterpretations. What do you think separates a real paranormal experience from just a trick of the mind?
That's a good question. It's hard to say because, I think it kind of depends what's happening with the whole context. What the situation when you see the ghost, is other stuff happening? Does somebody else witness it with you? To me, believe it or not, there's been a couple of times where I've actually seen an apparition really quickly, and it kind of happened unexpectedly and things like that. So I don't think it's a trick of the mind. I think something's there. Something's happening. Exactly how to explain it is not sure. The most recent time I had something like this happen was I went to Patrick Henry's house in Scotchtown, and there was a local team called Transcend Paranormal with Steve Dills and those folks. And I had never been there before, but one of the guys I knew was taking me around, just kind of giving me like a private tour while they were doing they were investigating another part of the house. And we were in this main bedroom, and we were facing each other, but to my right was the doorway. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw some movement. So I looked towards the doorway, and for a split second, there was a guy standing there, kind of see-through guy with a white shirt, brown pants, kind of grayish hair. And it was like just for a split second. And what made it cool was not only did I see it, but the other guy saw it. And we both kind of stopped. And then we kind of like started asking each other, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? So I think in some instances it's something is happening. Something's happening, in the environment that we're physically seeing. I think in other times you got to be careful. I think your mind could play tricks on you. You could potentially get primed up. There's a lot of research now where, if you go into a haunted location with certain expectations and a certain kind of, a certain open-mindedness to being open-minded to having paranormal experiences, or being emotionally fired up, and you're going into a haunted location, that you may potentially, maybe misinterpret something that's natural, but it misinterpret as paranormal, or you're more likely to have experiences that you interpret as paranormal. So I think some of it can be stuff that we may misinterpret, or it may be our mind playing tricks on us, that kind of thing. So, but I think there's a wide range. I think there are legitimate paranormal experiences. The other day I was playing a recording for the one medical student I had was interested in paranormal. So I recorded this EVP. Me and my wife had went to stay at a bed and breakfast. We went for dinner, decided to stay overnight, just kind of impromptu, and didn't have any equipment. But this place was dated back to like Revolutionary War, Civil War. And we said, hey, can you give us a haunted room? So they gave us a haunted room, and they had like a bedroom and a bedroom area and a living room area. In both places, they had gas fireplaces. And one of the stories was that the gas fireplaces turn on by themselves. It didn't happen for us. So we slept overnight, had some weird things overnight, footsteps and things like that. But then in the morning, we were kind of just goofing around, seeing if anything would happen. And I took my cell phone, I put it up on the mantle of the fireplace, and I go something like, if there's anybody here with us, can you turn that fireplace on? The fireplace didn't turn on, but this amazing EVP came across. Like, it was really, really loud. Like, it wasn't like, I think I hear EVP. It was like, rah, rah, rah. And it was like, it sounds like a foreign language, which was interesting because the original place was built by people from Germany. So way back in the 1700s. So anyways,
that's really interesting.
So, and the reason I'm saying all this is that just happened. Like, it just like, it wasn't like we were primed for it or whatever. We were just goofing around. Didn't expect anything to happen. Play it back, and there's this voice on there that shouldn't be there. And there's a loud voice. So I guess what I'm getting at is that I think there are truly anomalous or unexplainable things that happen that aren't, that are independent of us. And then there seems to be things that may be dependent on us, because there's also the idea of, do we project paranormal? Do we project into the environment and cause things to happen? Like poltergeist, or do we, can we will something to happen because we want, we think we're going into a haunted room? Can we, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a mix, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Or what if you're somebody that is so in tune to the spirit world that you can actually draw spirits to you?
Well, that's a good idea or concept too. I know some people are more sensitive than others, and I know that different people that I've investigated with, we tend to call them ghost magnets, because it seems like when they're around, stuff happens more often than not. And it'd be stuff that they may perceive, or people around them perceive, like EVPs or disembodied sounds, or hits on the equipment, those kind of things. So yeah. So I think potentially, if you're more sensitive, you may be more likely to experience them. I often wonder too, on the flip side of the coin, people who never have experiences, I wonder if they're just closed to them, or they're just not sensitive, or they dismiss certain things. I know there's things where, I may think that was paranormal. Somebody else who's never had paranormal experience would be like, I don't think that's anything. So it does, I think, depend on kind of where you are as far as, do you believe, not believe? And sometimes maybe not even believing, just have you ever had experience or even thought about that? I've talked to some people who have just never thought about ghosts and ghost experiences. So, and when you start talking to them about it, they're like, oh yeah, I do remember this one time. So I don't know. But I think it is, are you open to it or not? And that kind of thing. So
how much of this, how much are synchronicities based on like a collective conscience?
Well, I think that's what, when Sigmund Freud kind of came up with the idea, I think he felt that there was this kind of collective unconsciousness or collective knowledge that we all can tap into, and that perhaps that's where the where the synchronicities come from. Freud was interested in like spirituality and trying to combine it with psychology and all those kind of things. So he kind of coined the term synchronicity. And I think he kind of was working from the idea that there is this collective consciousness, which in a way is kind of interesting, because when you think about going back to near-death experiences, people talk about kind of absorbing into this oneness, this kind of oneness of love and knowledge and having, learning about all these things, that you kind of wonder is, does our souls come from this one collective consciousness, or, kind of knowledge base, and then does it go back to that when we die? So it's a possibility, I guess. It would help explain it to some degree.
Do you think that would like help explain, like when you think of somebody and then all of a sudden, like maybe this is happening even before, like maybe someone doesn't even have to pass away, but you have that connection, that spiritual connection, to where
right.
Even if you think about them, they automatically call you on the phone. It's happened to me many times with a couple
me
people.
too. Yeah, out of the blue.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you have to be. Yeah, I don't think you have to be dead to experience those things. I was just kind of thinking evidence for like a collective consciousness is the fact that we kind of maybe come and go from that. But yeah, there could be something that we all tap into, out there. So that would, and you're right. If you're happen to be, thinking about somebody and then they call you, maybe they're just, going across the collective consciousness and you're connecting with them not knowingly.
I kind of like going down the rabbit hole with this a little bit, but what are coincidences, and can they be evident of a parallel universe from what you've looked into?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Coincidences are kind of random things that happen, out of the, unexpectedly, that, for some people it may have meaning and some people don't. But I guess, if you're running different universes, if you're living, there's multiple lives in different universes, I guess, there's some theory that even like the afterlife connects in with our universe. And then, that's why you experience ghosts. And then it, briefly touches and briefly untouches. And then we have a ghost experience or whatever. So potentially, I guess you could have those in other situations too. If you're living parallel universes, could they potentially link up just for a second and you have that synchronicity and that kind of things? I guess you'd have to assume though that we're living in different universes at the same time in the same place, which I don't know. I mean, what do you think on that?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, because it's not something that I've really, like, I've always kind of looked at it from more of a spiritual aspect and not so much on like this, I guess, sci-fi aspect of it. But I'm not saying that it can't happen, because I've heard stories where people have said that, and actually the Robert Monroe Institute Gateway program actually taught stuff like this, to where they will physically put out like an orb or something, and out in there, like they'll envision or like remote view a vision of a basketball light or something in a certain area, and then they'll see that years later down the road.
Oh wow!
So I don't know.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned Monroe. It's not too far from me. It's close to Charlottesville. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that come from there, but
I think the thing with synchronicity, that one of the things that helps explain it potentially explain it, is the idea of entanglement. Quantum physics, they looked at particles, and that particles, can be far apart and still influence each other. They may, spin the same direction and those kind of things. So there's the idea of quantum entanglement, which that's become kind of more and more, it's more thought about, is could that help explain psi phenomena, and even like the synchronicity idea that even though you're far away, you could still transmit information because you have this entanglement for whatever reason. So that's kind of one of the things that when you look at like a crisis apparition, or those kind of things where somebody dies and dies, say they die in Charlottesville, but then you see them in Las Vegas, it's saying, hey, saying hi to you. It's like there's some kind of entanglement there that's going on because of the idea that the subatomic particles can could be linked together at a distance, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Boy, we just went down an entire rabbit hole there.
I don't know about when you think about
What are some of the
universes as a
experiments
possibility
that you have done in your paranormal?
Oh, sorry. What'd you say?
I know it kind of, sorry about that. It kind of cut out. What are some of the experiments that you have done in the paranormal through your investigations that have somewhat, I know there's no concrete, conclusive evidence of spirit communication, but somewhat conclusive, or maybe something that kind of convinced you that there's spirit communication going on?
I think for me, if you had to pin me down on why as a science guy do I continue to believe, I think one of the things for me, and I know this is probably controversial with science folks, but is EVPs. To me, I'm just blown away by those. It's cool when you get like an interaction with the REM pod or the K2 and all those kind of things. But when you get voices coming across, especially when they answer your question, I think for me, that kind of blows me away. Like even that thing I told you about with my wife at that bed and breakfast, even though we couldn't understand exactly what it was saying, the fact that something tried to reply to what we asked. So when you can have this back and forth communication, when you ask what's your name and it says Mary, and are you male or female, and you get responses. So that kind of stuff for me is hard to explain away. Even if you try to say, well, it's cell phones and frequencies and all these kind of things, it's still kind of, to me, when you get some direct responses that are in a timely fashion, it's hard for me to imagine that that's all chance. So I think, probably some of the most compelling for me is these EVPs that you get. The other things too is just, like when you get physical things happening, like I've heard footsteps, unexplained footsteps, not just like, one or two, it's like clearly hear footsteps going across, or, you hear somebody yell. I actually just did an investigation. A guy I know here in Charlottesville needed some help with an investigation. So it was me and him in this location, and we had the REM pod go off. That kind of clued us into something was going on. So we started asking more questions. As we're asking questions, you could clearly hear a voice say his name. I don't want to say his name now, but a voice clearly said his name that me and the guy heard, and we got it recorded. So to me, I was like, because at first I thought it was him, the guy I was with, saying it. I'm like, you whiz. I thought he was messing with me. I'm like, come on, man, you said that. But it was clearly a voice that shouldn't be there. And there was no TV on. There was nobody else around. There wasn't a radio going. You know what I mean? So I think it's stuff like that. That's like, it's like that shouldn't be there. And after you try your best to kind of, explain everything away, and you're kind of left like, I don't know what the heck this was. And the guy I was with was also an investigator. He had been investigating for a long time. So he was a seasoned investigator too. So we we're just kind of like, nobody didn't know what we were doing. So we both were still kind of blown away. Even when I clipped out the evidence for him and we sent it over to him, he was still kind of like, I still can't believe that happened. So I think for me, as far as actual stuff on investigations, I think it's probably EVPs, those unexplained voices, especially if you catch it. I mean, actually seeing something there. The couple of times I saw things. I mean, there was something there for a split second when I saw things. I think the other thing is when you get it back and forth, like whatever piece of equipment you're using. I know, again, some of the science academic guys will be like, these EMF meters and things like that. But I think when you start getting solid back and forth, where it's like, do this, do that, or you try to change it up. Okay, now do this device, now do that device. And I go back and forth. I'm like, yeah, it could be something environmental, but I don't know. It's like, it's happening too much. It's happening on command, and it doesn't happen when I'm not asking for stuff. It's one thing if you say light up to such and such, and it lights up, but then it also lights up a bunch of other times. When it only activates when you're having a back and forth, to me, that's kind of compelling stuff, and all that. So,
How I asked earlier about drawing spirits to you. So when you go into these places and you're getting intelligent responses and stuff, does that mean that these spirits are just hanging around in there? Or are they actually coming back from someplace else to communicate with you?
That's a good question. That's actually a great question. I often wonder about that because when you go to a lot of these famous places that are haunted, they're like, well, in that room, Sally's ghost, little Sally, 9-year-old, she's always in that room. To me, to me, it seems like they should be able to travel. I mean, if you believe spirits exist and it's a consciousness and souls, to me, it seems like they should be able to go anywhere they want. Now, maybe they prefer to be in a place, but I don't know if I buy into this idea that things are trapped.
Yeah, I don't either.
But it's a good question, because the question, I guess if you go to a place and you get interactions, I think that's one of the kind of the big question is, or is it something that's already there, or is it something that came with you, or is it something that you drew in? I think what you're getting at, and it's hard to know for sure. I think if you go to a location and you're getting consistent interactions with the same kind of thing from multiple different teams and groups that you feel are legit, then perhaps that's something there. It also seems like in some instances, the more a place is investigated, the more active it becomes. And I know there's this idea like stone tape theory, or there's other theories where maybe we leave a little bit of our energy there each time we go. Because there's a place here in not too far from me called Gordonsville Exchange Hotel. It's a Civil War hotel, Civil War museum. There's a lot of activity there. It seems like it's pretty haunted, but it's gotten more so over the years. Like I remember first going there, it wasn't real active like years ago, but now it's like when you go there, it's kind of crazy active. So it's hard to know, is it stuff that kind of we're leaving behind? Is it that the Exchange Hotel, the ghosts know, hey, people are going to come here, we get time to talk with them? Are they drawn to that building and just waiting for us? So I don't know, but it seems like some instances that places could tend to get increased activity. And then the question, I guess, is why is that? And are they following us, or is it just more spirits at that place are able to interact?
Yeah, or maybe they learned how to use the equipment too. There was a house that I investigated in a little ghost town not far from here. And it was an actual house that someone's living in, and nobody's ever investigated to our knowledge before. And so for the first day or two, there was nothing. And then finally, the person I was investigating with said, look, I don't think they know how to use the equipment. And so he started explaining to the spirits, this is how this works. You talk and we can hear you. And it was really bizarre. He looked like an idiot just standing there explaining everything to thin air, right? But it worked. We started getting responses back from that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned it, because I do that too on investigations. I'll go, look, if you get by this spot, if you get by this, and I try to show them as much as I can. So I don't know. I keep an open mind. The flip side is, to argue the other side, I know that a lot of like academic and science research investigators, I got a lot of friends that are more science based. They kind of all frown upon the off the shelf stuff. And I understand that, but I think when you use it and you get like kind of interactions you get sometimes, it's hard to just throw it out, even if it's off the shelf and it's not perfectly shielded, or it's not perfectly calibrated or whatever like that. To me, even with the off the shelf stuff, there seems to be something happening. But I know a lot of academic folks are like rather have, science grade equipment and things like that and that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know. I think there's something to the off the shelf stuff that we use too.
Is there any off the shelf stuff that they accept more so than others? The academic crowd?
So I think the academic folks, the loggers, the data loggers, like do you know about the EDI logger? It's the EDI logger. Actually, I know it surprises you. I got equipment just hanging around. The EDI data logger, basically it measures temperature, barometric pressure, humidity. It does vibration, EMF, and you can actually put an SD card in. Like I have this. You can put an SD card and you can record all your data. And you can put it into a program and do like a statistical analysis and things like that to look for. The question is when you have an interaction, and I think a lot of science folks, one of the things the question is it statistically significant or not? With something like this, if you can gather data and you can analyze it, is it significant or not? I think that gives something more weight. If I catch data on this that's significant and I can show the numbers and the data, then that tends to carry more weight versus if I use a K2 meter and I'm like, well, it lit up to red, the question is that's significant or not. You know, is
Yeah.
that, so I think a lot of academic folks are more based in what does that mean? Okay, the red light went off, but if I can't analyze that statistically or make sense out of it scientifically, what does that really mean? It's a cool experience, but it's hard to make a comment like a conclusion about it without being able to kind of analyze it and compare, you know, that kind of thing, if that makes any sense. But these I think the science folks like these, anything where you can kind of record the data, that's kind of legitimate data. I think that's always a good stuff.
That's interesting. Some cultures and belief systems see synchronicities as messages or guidance from the other side. Do you think there's intelligence behind these moments? I think you kind of answered that already, but just from a personal perspective.
You know, again, I'm going off my science guy. And like you said, I've had things happen that are like they seem. There's synchronicity, right? it's like that was really weird how that happened. And then I was going to bring this up too with this topic is one of the things we use as physicians is gut feelings. Like you get a gut feeling like, you know, I really think I need to check that CAT scan. And some of it I know you can argue is it's based on our experience and our knowledge, but sometimes you just get this overwhelming gut feeling that something's guiding you. Like there's been so many times I'm like, holy cow, I almost didn't check that CAT scan. And if I wouldn't have checked it, it would have changed the whole course of this patient's treatment. Because I had this gut feeling based on whatever. I think part of it is my experience and my knowledge, but the other part of it is I think it's a message from somewhere, right? The universe is guiding me because I'm like, oh my God, I almost didn't check that CAT scan, and thank God I did, kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think if it's possible if you say that synchronicity is something that's real, that maybe it is. You know, some guidance from the universe or from the afterlife kind of thing.
That is so interesting. I just love that story.
Yeah. There's been a lot of times. In fact, recently I was just telling somebody, holy cow, I almost didn't check. I forget what it was. I almost didn't check something, but it made a whole big difference in the treatment plan. It probably saved the patient's life, you know, versus they would have continue to get sicker and sicker if I wouldn't have checked. And you kind of go through this thing in your head like, I'm not going to check that. We always, you go back and forth, but I kept having this nagging feeling like check that whatever the CAT scan or whatever it was at the time. And sure enough, yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting I wonder how many times that actually happens, but isn't talked about in the ER field.
Yeah. Well, I think in medicine in general, people do talk about your gut feeling. We always say, go with your gut whenever in doubt, long as it's not crazy, long as it's like basic medical science, basic, you want to do something way off the grid. But if we always say, go with your gut, if you're in doubt and you're like, I don't know if I should check this or not, go with your gut feeling.
Well, Dr. Molnar, thank you so much for coming on the show again. I always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I love talking to you.
Is there anything coming up that, are you speaking anywhere or are you doing anything?
I don't have anything huge right now. I got to check in where there's supposed to be this Paracon up by Culpeper, Virginia, October 4th. I got to double check. They had mentioned about me potentially coming there and speaking, but I got to see if that's still going on or what the deal is with that.
Got it.
Otherwise, not too much. No, I've been working on. I don't want to say too much. I've been kind of helping out with some papers. I'm a very minor author in a couple of papers that might come out involving parapsychology stuff, but I've done very little. The other guys have done a lot of work. I've just kind of been a consultant, and I'm going to be named in the paper, but some of those are going to be out. And then I worked with some science guys. We went to Hinsdale House and did like a scientific approach to Hinsdale, and we're working on a book for that. Again, I was a minor part of that. The main guy is kind of putting it all together. But so there might eventually be a book that I was a part of, and it's a couple articles.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to me. And I'm definitely going to have you back on the show because I love talking to you about all of this.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, let me know. I can make sure I prepare a little better with some stuff. And sometime we can do some evidence clips.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you for some evidence clips, and then I just forgot.
Yeah, next time I'll have to play that EVP, that crazy EVP from that bed and breakfast. You'll be blown away by that.
When you go into these places, how do you set it up for investigation?
So when I investigate, it depends. Sometimes I just go with the flow, who I'm working with. I did do a solo investigation a few years ago, and I go in with in this particular situation, I set up a DVR system. So the people told me the hotspot. So I put the DVR system up, and then I basically just kind of go around and, kind of work the different rooms and see what happens. I actually stayed overnight in this particular place, and had some pretty cool experiences. But I'll kind of hit the hotspots and then, set up stationary cameras. I also use body cameras I can set up in hotspots and let those run. So I just figure out, where is the activity? Where are people interested? Where are the owners or the clients curious about? And then I'll just kind of work those areas, spend half hour or whatever's going on, spend a certain amount of time in each location trying to get activity. If they're active, then you keep working it with different pieces of equipment or those things. If they're not active, you kind of move along. Sometimes I'll just sit and be quiet, kind of set up the whole setup, what I'm going to use, and then I'll just kind of sit and be quiet and kind of feel the vibe, that kind of stuff. So,
how often is the paranormal activity happening in the hospital settings? Is it more so than?
Yeah, it seems like it is. I'm in the main hospital now, so it's a little hard to kind of sort out sometimes. But I hear a lot of different stories, and I've had some different weird things happen in the hospital, and I had some nurses come up and say, "Oh yeah, this other thing." So it seems like there tends to be more activity in the hospitals. That kind of thing. Nursing homes seem to be really active.
I have a friend who, she's a hospice nurse, and she has a lot of wild stories. I always wanted to go sit with her because of HIPAA, you can't do that, right? But right. I've always wanted to go and document the stuff. But
I think hospice nurses and hospice physicians, they probably have the best stories as far as that goes, and experiencing end of life and all that.
Yeah, from people seeing stuff in the room to weird happenings, as soon as the person passes away, stuff that happens in the room. And it would be really cool to be able to document that stuff. But we have those HIPAA laws.
No, I know. If you get permission and you do it, respectfully, and they'll mention names and stuff like that, I think you can kind of generalize and talk about the story. But you got to be careful with any kind of identifying information. The thing too is you can get permission. Is it okay if I'm here with my friend, kind of thing. That, so you can always have people potentially sign permission slips and things if you really want to do that kind of thing.
I'm going to look into doing that. Well, Dr. Molnar, it's been a fun night. Thank you so much for being on the show again. Can you tell the audience where they can find you? What questions?
Yeah. So my main thing right now is Facebook. I have a Haunted M.D. It's Haunted, HAUNTED, and then M.D. It's an open page. I did have Instagram and YouTube, but I haven't been doing that lately. But my Haunted M.D. page, you can reach out there, and I post a lot of interesting clips, some evidence clips, sometimes interesting thoughts, interesting things I find, when I'm online searching things. But if you're interested in what I've been talking about, I got stuff going back to 2018 on Haunted M.D. So you can go back through. I talk about DMT. I did a whole thing about pineal gland a couple years ago. It's on there and all that. So
I'll definitely look into that, and maybe I'll have you back on to talk about that just on its own, because that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and I can get up to date on that too and look at I think we could spend a whole hour probably talking about that.
Yeah, you could. Well, thank you so much, and we are out of time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, the mystical, and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. And until next time, guys.